everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend and Publish, and welcome to episode 99, Double Check Your Work Using Penzu. I've talked about Penzu on a couple of episodes. I'll make sure I link to some of those in the show notes for this episode. But Penzu is essentially an online writing journal. I think it's fabulous. It's free. And it looks like a paper journal, but digitally. I know I described it in another episode, and it's a tool I've talked about lots of times. But what I want to do today is show how it's actually helping me double check my work when I'm doing some deeper technical revising in a draft. So I do have slides for today if you're looking at this online, but it's just one screenshot. I'll describe what I'm showing on the screen. One of the things that I do with Penzu that I've noted in previous episodes is I log into it every day. So what I do is I get in there, I sometimes will make a new journal entry. Sometimes I'll work with a previous journal entry because I like to do mine more in a tagged type system where maybe one of my entries is about notes to put in my conclusion, and another one is about methodology, and another one is about a reminder not to forget to relabel all my table headings or something like that. So they're very specific to the task that I need to do in a book revision that I'm working on. But how it specifically helped me today, and I'm going to show this on the screen right now, is that one of the things that I had to do was to convert a table into a chart. So some feedback that I had gotten on my manuscript was that the table was too hard to see relationships between numbers. And so I needed to basically turn a table into a chart. So I had to do this. I probably have 40 charts through this book. It's a lot. It's a kind of a quantitative book. But one of the things that I did was I left the initial table in the document I was working on. I made a bar chart from there. So that's what I'm showing on the screen is basically a document that shows my original table with the new bar chart above it. So basically that same information is captured now in a bar chart. But one of the things that I realized is in doing so, I needed to also double check some of my headings because once I started making bar charts instead of tables, I found I could actually combine a couple of tables together, which threw all of my numbering for all of my now figures, because I'm not having tables anymore, all of my figures in my text. So let me say that again, because if you're listening to it, it probably doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. So I had tables, lots of tables of quantitative data. They were showing a bunch of hours used by different subject participants in different categories. So feedback was given to have me revise it and show it in a different way other than a table. I chose a chart so I could show relationships. So certain categories had more hours, certain had less. And so what happened though, in the course of converting from a table to a chart in several of my chapters, I realized I could actually put 3 tables of content into a single chart because I was comparing different areas of data. And once I did that, that messes up my table of contents because now not only do I have I don't have tables anymore, but I can't even do just a change table 3.1 to figure 3.1 because now some of my figures are incorporating several tables. So how I used Penzu specifically to help me make sure I have this correct is once I fixed or converted a table to a chart or combined tables into a chart, I copied down the figure heading and the number, and I've just kept a running document of those just in one of my entries in Penzu. It's not yet in my table of contents, and that's deliberate for the moment because I'm still not sure if I'm going to keep all of these. I'm going to move things around. But for here, this is a holding pattern. Penzu is a holding place. Penzu is amazing for just copying and pasting things like this and just storing them somewhere in an easily accessible entry. So on screen, what I'm showing is my Penzu entry where I basically copied in every single figure as I made it. So I have them in the right order to go into my table of contents. The other thing that this image shows is in the Penzu entry, it shows the title of my entry for the journal was Table of Contents, Revisions, and then a slash bar and figures. And that's reminding me that this particular entry does not tell me everything about table of contents revisions. It's got some, But I have a couple other entries titled that with a slash bar about something else. So some of it's titling, some of it's, formatting or whatever. But this one says figures. So I know from looking at this entry, this is my most up-to-date figure list, and it needs to go into my table of contents. So this kind of information could also be stored in, say, Asana, my project management chart. But as I've noted in a previous entry or a previous podcast episode, I have used Asana and Penzu kind of in tandem. So Asana is where I store big picture tasks and kind of keep track of the little subtasks, but Penzu is a spot where I'm holding work in progress. So last week's episode was about using an extra document to hold some extra writing in progress. One of the things that you could do if you don't want to make it a Word document, you could actually make an entry in your Penzu as extra information and store that extra material there. So if you're intrigued by that idea, I will link to it in the show notes. But I've just found that Penzu is a very flexible tool for this kind of writing stuff, and it doesn't task my brain with remembering where am I storing that, where is it going. So I know anything like this that are just sort of general notes about this book project and the structure, they're all in Penzu, and I can search for them by what it is I need to do. So let's think about this to close this episode, how I might, when I turn in a final revision of a book, how this is going to help me. This is going to help me because when I have to do the table of contents, I can search in Penzu, and I'm circling the little search box on the screen for viewers, but I can search in Penzu and type in table of contents. All of my journal entries about my table of contents will pop up, and I can go through and make sure I've addressed all of the issues in there. So I have some of these noted in Asana that I need to do them, but Penzu is the spot where I store how I do them or what the thing is that has to go into the table of contents. So hopefully that distinction makes it a little bit more clear. Also, as always, I'm sharing our TAA resource of the day / week. This was one that I used today. And what this one is it's a blog post because TAA has a blog that's useful. There's all kinds of things in there. Some of it's news about the organization, some of it's tips. But this one I thought was really great because it was a quick blog post on 4 types of writing stalls and how to come back from them. So it does hit on things that we've all heard about writer's block. We've even done some episodes on writer's block about structural writing blocks and the like. So it's all in there. But what I really liked about this blog post is, again, it's very easily digestible and short, but does provide some insight for somebody just looking at it, trying to understand, why am I not writing? They could read through the 4 types and the descriptions in this blog post, see which one it is, and then get a few practical suggestions about how to move forward. So what I like about this is, let's say you're in the middle of writing, you don't want to write, you have 45 minutes that you devote from writing on weekday mornings, 20 minutes in and you're stuck. This would be the type of resource you could click over to TAA, look, figure out which one you've got, and then look at some of the strategies to try to address it. So I like the connection between jumping to this resource and then getting back into your writing. So as I've mentioned before, I only promote resources I actually use. This is one I actually use. I did not use it myself for writing blocks, but I used it with a faculty writer who was writing next to me. She likes to come up, and when we have writing sessions together where we write near each other or write on site, and she was just frustrated because the writing wasn't happening today. So this was a tool I could point her to and say, well, which one of these seems to be the issue? And it was just really helpful because we could just talk through a couple of quick strategies. It turned out in her case, she had a block where she didn't know how to do something. She literally did not know how to do it. And it was something that she could look up and find a model for how someone else did it. It was basically a way to talk about methodology in a feminist way that she was using for her project. So blogs are great. I got to say, I don't read them all the time, but in this case, I like the very short, practical snippets, and how a lot of the blogs at TAA are just a 5-minute read at most. With practical strategies to try right then and there. So hopefully I'll have a chance to check them out, and happy writing this week.